We made it.
Hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Deep Learning. This is a brand spanking new Battlesnake show that we're trying out. So thank you for joining us on this journey. My name is Aurora. I work for Battlesnake. And beside me, I have
Andrew, I also work for Battlesnake, and super excited to be here. Sorry, I was realizing, Aurora, that I was like, why am I hearing an echo? And then I realized that I have the Twitch stream going on the other screen, and I was like, oh, that's why. Anyways, super excited to be here. This is going to be a great show. If you are all tuning in, welcome Master Coder 457, who took up my challenge of sharing where they are from. So we've got viewers from across the country right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So since this is a new show, let's give a little context about what we're hoping for. So Andrew and I, something we have in common is we both come from like a tech education background. So we're really interested in that aspect. And we have some fabulous Battlesnake shows. We have Brad and Joe Coding Badly, which is a beautiful adventure as they stumble through code, having what I can only describe as adventures, right? Adventurous hijinks, which is wonderful. We also have Snake Pit Live, which is fantastic for keeping up to date with what's happening for our leagues and for our events are running and getting that kind of like play-by-play caster experience. But we thought there might be an opportunity to try some educational content. So our goal here is to cover a variety of topics, and we're experimenting with one today. So we want to talk about, stuff that's useful for your career, stuff that's useful for like education, like the academic and algorithms. So please, if you have ideas or thoughts or things you would love or hope we talk about, toss it in chat. Let us know. We are harvesting ideas and concepts, but we figured we'd start with one we thought was really fun, which was talking about how to use your Battlesnake as like fodder for your resume, which is kind of neat. Like when you're applying for jobs and you need a code sample, I really think a Battlesnake snake is a good one to go with. So maybe let's open with why you should listen to us. Andrew, do you want to sort of give a spiel for yourself first?
I was going to say, I mean, we're here, and so are you. So first off, thank you for being here. That's a good reason to stick around. So I'm Andrew. I'm the community manager for Battlesnake. I'm so happy to be back from behind the scenes. I'm also a BC certified, a British Columbia, Canada certified high school science teacher, computer science amateur to the stars. And I've been running a bunch of programs for a long time, teaching high school students how to get into sort of software development and software engineering. And of course, through that process, I hire lots and lots and lots of computer science undergraduate and graduate students and teach all of these people how to kind of get connected with the industry. So I'm super excited to share some of my knowledge out with the world of Twitch.
Yeah. And for myself, so I have 10 years of experience working as a developer, primarily in Python. But in that 10 years, I've spent 4 as a hiring manager. And I've had the beautiful opportunity to do a lot of resume review and hiring. And as a part of that, I have had a chance to read a lot of code samples, including, I am pleased to say, Battlesnake code samples. And so often I find that that's a perspective that people are missing. Like, what does it seem like? How does it appear to the person who's actually doing the code review, the reviewing when you're hiring? And we figure we could like pull back the curtain a little bit, give you some hints, give you some tips and tricks on how to get the most. And we really think that Battlesnake is it's just such a good code sample. Like, like it really, really is. So maybe to start off, let's like get some context here. Andrew, when you're interviewing, when you're taking a look at like code samples or trying to give people feedback, like what are some of the things, like the high level things you're looking for?
Ooh, so like number one big thing, and that I think is done really well, even in the starter snakes that Battlesnake does, documentation and like inline documentation on code samples of showing what you have done in certain places for other people that are going to go in and use that. That is something that I think is underrated. People assume that everybody knows exactly what the code is meant to do, but so many hiring managers are more my speed, where they're not necessarily like trained software engineers, computer scientists. So things like, oh, this is what this thing does, explains to a layperson in like a really managed way, that you also know what you're doing and you can explain something to somebody.
Totally, totally. And like perfection is not the key. Like I think what's really important to know is that someone who's looking at it I feel like you're not giving yourself enough credit here, Andrew, but like even someone like myself who's like had a lot of experience is like when I'm looking at a resume or looking at code samples, I probably have like 60 or 100 to do.
Oh,
and
totally.
and like the easier you can make it for me to read and understand what's going on, the better. I've seen a lot of really cute things. Maybe cute's not the right word, but like I've seen people send me samples and they're like, "Oh, here's how you download it. Here's how you execute it." And I'm like, I just don't have the time or energy for that. So like I want it to be quick and I want to get a good impression of who you are as fast as possible. So that's like a really important thing. And it doesn't have to be perfect either, which I think is really important. It can be easy to dive into the details and be like really, really worried about the tiniest of syntax errors or the tiniest of details. But I think if you're going to have one goal with your code sample, and maybe this is surprising, but I would actually want to have it show that you know how to learn. And the reason that makes the reason I say that is because when you're in a job and when you are like working on things, learning a specific coding language or learning like the syntax or the habits, that's kind of the easiest part. The hard thing to teach someone is like an enthusiasm for learning. And that's where a code sample, especially a Battlesnake code sample, really, really shows your enthusiasm. So, I mean, one might say, are we biased about Battlesnake?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay, we'll be honest. We're a little bit biased, but I hope you can agree with the facts that instead of having like a code sample that's clearly like a class project that you did, which you like had to do, or like a tutorial you did online because you're like, I don't know what I want to do for a code sample. I need something to send in with my application. Battlesnake is like interesting and neat and eye-catching and shows your enthusiasm and your desire to learn and grow.
Yeah, and I think that super speaks to I love the fact that at the very start of this, when you asked me, what is the thing that you look for? I was like, a thing that's not related to anything we'd planned on talking about. But I am realizing that it kind of feeds to it. Like, I think one of the reasons Battlesnake is it's cool. People are human. Like people that are hiring managers, if you're looking at 1 million resumes a day, or not 1 million resumes, but if you're looking at a lot of resumes, you want something interesting. It excites you. And like, if you see Battlesnake on a resume that's been submitted, you want to dig a little bit deeper, and then that hiring manager can get excited too. And I think that like super speaks to the fact that like human, it's not like we talk about like all of these systems to make the application process smooth, but at the end of the day, it's a person that's looking at that resume, right? And
yeah. Oh, and like biases are really hard to fight. Like when I'm doing resume review and things like that, there's a lot of advice and tricks to try and help remove bias. So if you're lucky, a company is doing things like removing names to remove gender bias and like trying to anonymize things and like make it as fair as possible. But we are human. And so when your code sample says Battlesnake, one of two things is going to happen. Either A, the person reviewing it is going to go like, oh, snap, I know what Battlesnake is. This is awesome. Or they're going to be like, Battlesnake, what is that? And they'll actually want to look at it compared to like, I don't know, like your sorting algorithm code sample, you know?
Yeah, and do you find, I don't know about you, but I find a lot of the times when people put things on their resume, they'll put like the best example and like this super intense thing that shows their massive like cross section of things that they can do. And it'll be labeled like this intense algorithm. And it's like there's almost an expectation that hiring manager is going to go and like run that program and see all of these things in action. And it's just not gonna, like there's so many resumes that are going through. So it's hard to ever imagine somebody going and running all these code samples, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like this is something Andrew, you and I were kind of chatting about before the show as well, is like going through that detail, going through all of the applications, it's just so time consuming. It's so exhausting. And there aren't really rules. Like I found this, I don't know if you all remember, if you've ever like looked at websites trying to find advice on like how to really make a great resume or like how to do something perfectly. I find it very funny is that there's these like rules about what kind of fonts to use, how you should arrange it, like best practices. But the truth of the matter is the people who are reviewing resumes or doing job applications are often untrained in really good strategies and are often unpracticed or not very skilled. So it's kind of funny that like we're following rules and best practices, but if the person who's reviewing it isn't, it's kind of like a, ooh.
It's true. And it's always like oftentimes, and it's just the nature, like the people that are involved in the hiring process, this is just like that small piece of the puzzle, right? For them, they're doing so many other things that even if it is somebody that would understand some of those super high level pieces that you're trying to put in there or all the detail that you're creating, it's a split second that they have to look at that.
Yeah. So whatever advantage you can get, like anything that's like eye-catching or something someone will remember, toss it in there, which for me, that's my endorsement as to why a Battlesnake code sample is a particularly good code sample. So, I mean, on that note, if you'll allow me some shameless promotion here, if you don't have a code sample and you're looking for one, you could start building a snake. We have Spring League running right now. So here's the URL up on screen. You can start putting your snake into competition. I mean, there's something about seeing it go up the leaderboard that really motivates you to keep working on it and adding your code. And so you can work on that from that snake perspective of like trying to get something performant and then come back to this as a video maybe later and see about how you can now tweak it. So it wasn't just play, it wasn't just, you know, for the prizes, but you were doing it for your professional development, right?
It's true. I actually I released my first real snake into, and I'm like at silver right now, or like I'm moving up the leaderboard, and literally all my snake does is in a very effective code efficient way does not die when it hits a wall. That's it.
Yeah. Perfect. Beautiful. That's fantastic. So yes, Spring League, I'll put the URL up again. But yeah, definitely a good excuse. Professional development, you're doing it for you. It's an act of self-care by building a Battlesnake. So Andrew and I have a couple of talking points, but if you have questions or thoughts or like would like us to talk about something specific, toss it in chat. We're keeping an eye on it. But other than that, we have a big list of advice and recommendations. And we'll also take a look at some specific code samples and sort of do a bit of a live evaluation. So if you would like us to live evaluate your code, toss make sure it's public, toss us a GitHub link in chat as well, and we'll queue those up and take a look-see.
So Alter Saddle threw something in there, and very interesting point. So as a reader of resumes, I would put twice as much value in a winning Battlesnake versus a regular one. That's true, because people that are in the world, like they'll recognize that name, right? They'll recognize like if there's a snake that they've seen in the competition. And then if you're able to share like how that snake functions, I can totally see where that's coming from.
Yeah. That actually ties into another thing. It's not about the code sample specifically, but when you are putting together a job application for a software job, and this is especially true if you're like looking for your first job or your junior, something that can be very exhausting, especially at the junior level, is that all of the applications look the same. They have very similar projects. They have like very similar experience levels, like maybe a co-op or an internship here or there. And it can be really hard to pick, right? Like you're like, as a resume reviewer, I'm like desperate for some reason for someone to stand out. And so I always advocate for cover letters that are really personable and like are a place for you to shine. Like the resume part and the code sample is like professional and factual. And it's like, I know what I'm doing. But then the cover letter is where you can show your personality and be like, hey, like I'm super interested in these topics. I've experimented a whole bunch of things. And if you've got like a Battlesnake history, you can bring it up in the cover letter and be like, hey, like this is one of the fun things I've done. And like BT dubs, you know, I reached, you know, platinum level in a Spring League, like I've been competing. And it gives you like something interesting to talk about that's eye-catching.
It's true.
I don't know. How do you feel on what's your feelings on the resume versus cover letter?
I don't know. So it's interesting you talk about projects. We recently hired for another thing that I'm involved in, and we hired from like a very similar place, which like same as a lot of the juniors, right? And of all of the projects, I think that we had 16 applicants, and like 10 of them had the same project, and that made it really, really tough, right? To be able to go in there even, and like it got to the point where we did like do local hosted versions of them, but that's not something that most employers are ever going to go and do.
Yes.
So you have to have something that's going to set you apart just in sort of the way it's presented, the way it's created, what it is. I think that super, super speaks to that. And yeah, I think Battlesnake is one, like even cover letters, right, can tend to be these things that there's so much energy and effort put into making it super professional and like fit within certain guidelines that have been provided. But as a cover letter reader, I 100% am like always excited when I see people call out cool things that they've done. Like, oh, I did this club when I was in university, or like I'm actively involved in this thing, or I do this competition. It's something that makes you a real person. It's that human thing. Like people want to work with people, and they want to work with people that are fun. Like people hire based on who they can see themselves engaging with, and showing that you not only are really interested in learning, but also that you're really interested in like something kind of cool and community focused is super important.
Very cool. Yeah. And I'm just to acknowledge here, JT523 saying thank you. You're welcome. I actually really love helping people. I don't know why. That whole beginner journey, the education cycle, or like getting people started, I'm always happy to do this. So we have a question here. Do code samples have to be on GitHub for you to look at them? That's like, I don't think that's a requirement. Just make it easy. Like, honestly, that's like the big thing you're fighting against is whether you're using GitHub or GitLabs, or whether you're attaching it, making it as easy as possible and as smooth as possible for the person reviewing it to read it is really the key, because you're fighting against their fatigue, you're fighting against their attention. Like oftentimes I would have a busy workday where I'm like talking with my coworkers and employees, or maybe writing some code, and then I might be reviewing resumes at like 5 p.m. and I'm like kind of bagged. So like just make it easy. What system it is doesn't really matter. One advantage of using a Git-based system is it gives you another point. It actually proves that you know how to use Git.
Totally. I was just going to say, like, if somebody, so I think GitHub is like a really good place for it. But I was like, if somebody threw up like a Git, have you ever used Git T? Like, have you seen that? It's like a self-hosted Git repository system. Like, I feel like if you see people hosting on some of these less common Git systems, it almost is that a piece of that point of like, you know how to use these things, and you're being creative with your use of it. But yeah, I totally agree. Like, if you can throw it on GitHub, it proves that you know an industry standard tool.
Yeah, like nothing is worse than I don't know. I'm not a fan of these. This is something I've spoken to other hiring managers, and there's like varying opinions. So please don't take mine as like the global accepted value. But I personally dislike the thing you do where you're like, Java 4 stars and a 5, Python like 3 stars and a 5. Like I dislike that ranking system because it's kind of meaningless. It's like out of context, and like who are you to judge? I really like seeing evidence. So don't tell me you know something, prove you know something. And that's where a code sample can really shine, is it's like factual evidence that proves you actually know how to use Git. And I think this is something we were talking about, Andrew, the like one commit versus many commits.
Yeah. So if you are watching this stream, awesome. So welcome. You're here at Deep Learning with Aurora and Andrew. Super excited to have you. You're awesome. Thanks for showing up. We're really excited to have you. But we're talking all things Battlesnake for your resume process. And yeah, I think like with the Git piece, I often hear a lot of people that see that they should use GitHub, and then they'll immediately go and like upload a current project that's already complete. They'll just like upload it, and then that's it. And as a hiring manager, when you go into there you're not necessarily seeing that somebody knows how to use GitHub effectively. You're more seeing that they read somewhere that they should use GitHub and they're just sort of using it as like a Dropbox. And that's almost worse because it shows that you didn't really invest the time and energy into understanding why hiring managers are interested in you putting it on there. And I think that's where Battlesnake, especially if you're using like particularly like the older style where you did it on GitHub and then pushed to like Heroku or something, and all of the changes were actively recorded in there. It was like, okay, there's like 200 commits in there and I can see all the changes you made. And did you put a good commit message or did you just kind of put some garbage in there? And that'll show some things as well about how the person is actually communicating and learning and sharing and what they're focused on.
Yeah, and if you're building a starter snake in Replit, you can connect your Replit and GitHub account and deal with your version history that way. But yeah, that's exactly it. Is I'd see someone, they're like 5 out of 5 in using Git, and then their entire repository is full of projects that just have init commit, and that's it. And I was like, I don't know about your 5 out of 5 self-assessment here. It's questionable. I'm uncertain. So other tips. This is another reason why we think Battlesnake's a great example. Is it's clearly your own work. So something I saw in another like chat group that I was in was talking about like, oh, should I take code samples from a previous job? Like, where do I get them? And a lot of students are trying to do like code samples from homework assignments. Like, obviously use what you have and like double down. If you've got a homework assignment you're really, really proud of, pop it in there. But when you're using code samples from a previous job, you really have to be aware that that code is almost like most likely under an like a non-disclosure, like you're not allowed to keep it and save it and share it, which sucks. I feel that I write a lot of code for work that I cannot share when I'm like looking for another position. So that's where Battlesnake is like clearly your own. It's clearly not a tutorial. So it shows that independence and that skill, which I quite like.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that there's something to be said. Like, I think you could still use, if you're a Battlesnake, like if you're new, if you're a younger developer, and you're like, oh, well, then can I use like the Battlesnake starter snakes? Because technically those are like pre-made. It's okay if you're not just leaving it. So I've seen some snakes that are like, you know, that they haven't changed the color, they haven't changed the skins, like there's no real sort of work that's been done with that, which makes it really obvious that you've just sort of set it and forgotten about it. But if you put the work in and you can demonstrate that you're using that and doing something creative with it, even those kind of templates are useful.
For sure. All right. So I feel like we've talked like really broad strategies, like we've justified this quite well. Should we go through like a little bit of checklist of like, if there's something you want to write down, this is the checklist to write down, as it were. And maybe we'll go into this we'll look for these things when we're looking at a code sample. But I think number one for me with any code sample is try to demonstrate some really basic clean code principles. And you don't have to go overboard and you don't have to like agonize over every little detail. But really focus on making your code easy to read. Because you're having people evaluate it. They're making like a really quick judgment. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them to read. So that means having like really plain variable names and function names that are like descriptive of what they do, and like break things up into functions or objects. If you're using an object-oriented language, if you have one like big mono function, it's not a great look. Now, having said that, I challenge anyone to tell me that their first Battlesnake wasn't one big mono function, right? Like that is fine. Like when you're in the competition mode and you're like pushing and trying to make changes, and like that's going to happen. This is more like once you're past competition and you're like wanting deliberately to use your Battlesnake snake second place value, right? Come first in a tournament, come first in a job hiring competition, right? Then take the time, go back to your snake and just start divvying it up and like making sure it's easy to read. I'm thinking along with other clean code principles, have a consistent style. Like don't mix cases, use the right case for the language you're doing. Another like awesome thing about Battlesnake is it's fantastic for like practicing new languages, right? So you might have like, I don't know, depends on how ambitious you are. You might have like multiple snakes in multiple languages. So if you're working in Java, like make sure you're using like the camel case style. And if you then go build a Python snake and you're like, I'm going to use this to prove I know a little bit of Python, then make sure you're using snake case. Like don't mix it up, because it's a bad look if you're like, see, look, I know Python, and you've violated the conventions of the language. So use the right one. Like your goal is that without too much context, you want it so that a good developer can kind of like quickly understand what you're getting at with your code. That's kind of like the level you want to be at. No one's going to be diving in and just being like, like, I don't know, should this have been like plural or whatever? It should be like high level, because anyone who's reviewing it is just going to be scanning and trying to like look for things that they're not looking for like fine mistakes. They're looking for things like jar them out and are big mistakes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, except for us. Today, we are going to literally take a deep dive into somebody's code samples. So we're going to do what everybody thinks hiring managers are going to do, but they don't really do. But it's still good to do because it depends on where they dive to as to what they're going to be focused on.
Yeah. Oh, it makes it sound mean. No. Like someone... I hope you all feel, and maybe it'll take a few deep learning shows for you to trust us, but I hope you all feel that like someone giving a review and feedback is an act of love, because we care enough about you to help and to make you be your best. That's really what the review is about. So yeah, that's what our goal is. We love you, and we want to review something for you to help you be the best you can be.
There is some like love on the stream and in the chat. Hexagon definitely just hired Twoten, so kudos. See, Battlesnake really does lead to careers. There's a job. I didn't even see the job offer.
But you get it. You're hired. Yeah. Like my Battlesnake is still a mono function. Yeah. I have like my basic strats, and I was like, well, if no one wants to volunteer a code for us to review, we could look at basic strats, except I'd really like it's not great. It's not great, guys. I threw it together for a demo. I throw it into a league. Mono function snakes are the norm. So this is about polish. This is about polishing your snake for a different context. So if you put in your resume that you have the most cursed snake, that sounds like a win, right? Yeah. I mean, entertaining snake. I love those comments like in your resume or in your cover letter. It just gives personality. It shows your enthusiasm, and that is a win. You can charmingly awkward, right?
That's good. Charmingly awkward.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Sweet. All right. So first like checklist for a code sample that you are grooming for a job application is just demonstrate some basic clean code principles appropriate for the language that you are supplying. Sweet. Next tip number 2. I know this is controversial, but I'll give you some guidelines. Comments and documentations that can like give a hint about how you work and how you communicate. And like, I know there's a lot of strong opinions about comments. There are like entire blog posts of like highly professional people talking about how like comments are a waste and that code should be self-explanatory. And the trick here is, in my opinion, is that a comment shouldn't tell you what the code does. That really sucks. It sucks reading a code sample and seeing a for loop, like, I don't know, iterate over some moves, and then a comment that says iterate over the moves. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
I can read that. But if you have a comment that says why you did something, that's more important, especially because a comment can kind of cover you when you do something janky and you don't want to fix it. So if you've got some like jank in your code that like works for you and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want like a potential employer seeing this, toss a comment on there and you're like, hey, this is a bit jank, but this is what I had time to do. Or like provide an explanation, sort of say why you did the jank get out of jail free card. That's what I do at work. Like if you ask Brad, that's just, you know.
I do like the thing that I started with by saying like, this is the thing that I look for in my document. This is like proof that like you can't believe everything that you read on the internet, because I started off with the most controversial thing of like documentation and commenting. It's the thing that I care about. And then we're all learning things today, not only those that are in the chat and watching the stream, but me here discovering new things on deep. This is very deep learning, meta learning.
Yeah, definitely the why. And that's actually a tip too, if you're doing like an interview and they're having you like write code on the fly or something, is the objective when you're interviewing or the objective when you're applying for a job, because that's like a high pressure, stressful situation, is not to be perfect. It's to prove that you're capable of like reasoning through the problem. And so if you're just like hyper stressed, and this is what I'll do sometimes, is I'll like toss in a comment that's like pseudocode of what I intend or what I mean. I'm like, I'm not an idiot. I know what I'm doing. I know what I want to do. I just, in the pressure of the moment, can't do this right now. So having like comments or hints of your work, or if there's like an expansion that you want to do, like you have your snake and you have a cool idea, but you haven't had time to implement it yet, tossing in a little comment that's like, this is how I want to expand this, is like interesting, shows that your code is alive and shows that you're thinking instead of someone just reading it and judging it.
Totally. Yeah. By the way, welcome to everybody that's not so active in the chat, because I know sometimes we all forget about those people. So hello, there's like 18 people watching right now, which is super exciting. And like, if you're on the Twitch stream and you're not chatting, that's okay. We're here for you too. But if you want to throw something in the chat, we're happy to contribute and to talk with you. And our community is pretty awesome for our first pilot episode. So yeah.
Cool. So, sorry, this is the repetition teaching thing I do. Tip number 1, basic clean code principles. Tip number 2, make sure you have good comments that document ideas and expansions and focus on the why rather than the how a chunk of code was written. Tip number 3, do you want to give that a go, Andrew?
I do. Okay, so this is all about Git. So if you're using, if you're going to use GitHub and you're going to show that, make sure that you're using it effectively. Make sure that you're demonstrating with commit messages that are showing what you're doing, that are perhaps not demonstrating your level of frustration that you may be having with a particular. I'm pretty sure I did a commit yesterday that just said stupid Firebase. And that was not necessarily an effective commit that I would want somebody to see if they were looking in there. So yeah, focus on, if you are going to use the platforms and it's going to be something that you're showcasing out there, that you are using it in an effective way. And everybody makes mistakes. And I think people will recognize the frustration, but if you are going to use it, focus on making sure it's something that that you would want somebody else to see.
Yeah. Yeah, true story. I was like doing a code evaluation on someone who looks good, who looked pretty good enough that I wanted to spend some time looking at their code repos. And I did, and their Git history was full of profanity-laden sexist commentary. And
Really?
I was like, whoa. And so, I mean, we mentioned earlier about like trying to find like moments of bias to kind of like catch someone's attention or like catch a reviewer's eye so that you stand out from the crowd. But you also don't want to do the opposite where you stand out in a bad way. And that was a bad way.
Yeah, that is the definition of a bad way.
Yeah.
Are you seeing these things coming in? Language choice for a code sample?
So how important is language choice if building a Battlesnake as a code sample? And should anyone ever program in Haskell ever? So that is an interesting question, because I think it really depends on the job you're applying for, right? Like, what does your code sample say about you? So ideally, you have a code sample in a language for the job that you are applying for. So whatever kind of shop they are, whatever they work in. Haskell's an interesting one. I think that's a funny one where it could either deeply attract someone or potentially repel. I don't know. So that's a risk. I think the goal is to be yourself. And if you are all in on your Haskell snake, then putting that in your resume means that other Haskell loving people will be attracted to you. So I think it's a risk worth taking. Yeah.
Totally. There's been some cool ones. Like there's like been some really cool Rust snakes in there, which is a language that I have heard so much about, but you don't see it showing up in a lot of places. But yeah, like these, so yeah, be true to you.
Yeah, be true to you for sure. And it can be interesting too. Like if you want to show off some polyglot skills, right? That might be attractive to a potential employer. But it's tough. It's so context specific. But you can't go wrong with making sure you have a code sample in the language for the job you're applying for. Oh, Hexagon, the tips are spot on. Thank you. We appreciate that. You know, we try. The joke that you should write your code as if a serial killer is going to be the next person. Yeah. There's not only that joke, but there's another joke I love, which is like debugging code is like trying to solve a murder mystery, but the catch is you are also the murderer. Like, it's tough. It's tough. Nice. So comment here, I'd often get candidates to do FizzBuzz on the whiteboard, but it doesn't have to work perfectly. Totally. Yeah. And I mean, that's what you want from a good employer. Like, hopefully you are interviewing or applying, and whoever's reading your resume or your code sample is skilled and is aware of these concepts, and are aware that it doesn't have to be perfect and that they're looking for like the broad strokes. But I also understand too that like not all hiring managers are experienced, or not all people giving an interview are experienced. So yeah, it can be tough out there. I feel for people looking for a job. It's not the most fun part of the career.
True.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you, chat. I love those. I love sharing the dumb jokes. So we've covered a couple of topics. So demonstrate some basic clean code. Definitely go with that. Make sure you have good comments, ideas that kind of explain what you're thinking, where you're going next, why something works, not how. Delete all the comments that are just redundantly explaining how the code works, and replace them with comments that say why the code is doing what it does. But at a high level, and I'll express a bias I have right now. So most of my career and experience is in like web software. So I don't build mobile apps. I don't build like desktop application software. I mostly build web software. So as someone hiring from that perspective, you kind of want, there's like a checklist of things that people are supposed to know ideally. So if your code sample can prove that you have those skills all in one go, that's like really awesome. And the Battlesnake code sample can do that as well. So like advantage to a Battlesnake code sample is it proves, like, it's not you just claiming it like proves that you understand basic HTTP and like at least a basic web framework. Admittedly, the Battlesnake sample snakes set a lot of that up for you, but it's just a little piece of evidence. When I've been working with my like reports, I tell them over and over again that I don't want you to tell me how great you are. That's like not quite good enough. I need you to prove. I need evidence. And this is evidence. It's better than the 5-star ranking system. It's evidence, which is harder to ignore and is really appreciated.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a good one. Oh, how important are high-level colleges? How much better is it to have a selective school on your resume? Do you want to, I feel like I've been talking a lot. Do you want to take a stab at this first, Andrew, or?
Yeah, sure. So JD523, are you looking at like when you're applying for a job, how important those schools are? I mean, it all depends. I think if you've got somebody, if you're in the US and you're looking at like Harvard or MIT or one of those places, and you end up applying for some place where a person is an alumni of that school, that might get you a step up. But I think at the end of the day, the school that you went to proves so much. But everybody, especially now in 2021, everybody's got something really spectacular in regards to education on their resume. So what's that the drama game, like Yes and, where
Yeah.
you always have to like say you have to agree to everything and then go to the next stage. I feel like even if you have a high level college on your resume, things like Battlesnake are what are going to get you the job versus getting you potentially the interview. Because you know what? schools teach great things, but a lot of it's somewhat disconnected from the real world, even in really well-known post-secondary institutions. So Battlesnake is like real world skills. I think you said it like perfectly, Aurora. It's like, you need to not just tell me like I went to a really great school and it has really great alumni and look at all these people that went there. It's, here's a thing that I can do to actually put that into practice. Yeah, but that said, I think it's like Aurora said, and like we've been saying since the beginning, it's all about it's human process, right? So there may be somebody that sees that Harvard or that MIT, or I literally choosing like 2 schools that every Canadian would know of when they think of the U.S. colleges, and I'm probably missing some other Ivy League schools, but that's only going to get you so far. And when you get into the resume, they'll say, "Awesome, you went to that great school. Now what?"
Yeah. The other thing worth noting too is it's all relative. So like if something that is maybe not obvious and that I've had to explain as a hiring manager is if you don't get the job, there's a very good chance, especially if you got to like the interview stage or you got a phone interview, it's highly likely it's not that you are bad. It's not that you are inadequate. It's just that maybe there was someone else who was a slightly better fit, right? So if I have an inbox and it's all full of University of Waterloo applications, now that doesn't matter anymore because you're all the same, right? Like, so it's all relative based on who's in there. And it can also be funny if you're in like the junior level, like there's an assumption that I make if someone has a college or a university degree, that gives me some assumptions about what they know. And it kind of, I have my expectations about what I think I'm going to get from them. Not to say that I have like higher expectations or different, but like I know that you've probably taken like a data structures class. I know you've probably taken an operating systems class. I like know your theory is pretty strong. And that's different compared to like when I'm evaluating someone who's like from a boot camp, because I know the boot camp experience is different. It tends to be very like practical and hands-on. So like I know that that's the type of experience they've had. And depending on what I'm hiring for, I may want one or the other. Having said all that, though, I have hired a lot of self-taught programmers, and I have loved them. And their not having a degree on their resume wasn't a downside for them because in their resume, in their cover letter, and in their code samples, they proved to me that they knew what they knew. And that's what's important. If you have a prestigious college on there, and then you have a code sample that's lacking, doesn't matter. You just proved to me that you don't have the skills I'm looking for. So a degree isn't quite enough evidence for me. If you have your evidence of your skills in your code sample, that is better than anything else. Having said all that, though, I also know that there are very large companies who like
Totally.
who will just like axe you immediately. They only hire from specific colleges or universities. That's a truth, but every company is different. So yeah.
It's a good question though, like super important thing to talk about, and like post-secondary is definitely the way, but there's something to be said, like if you're able to pull yourself and teach yourself these things and demonstrate your ability to learn outside of a formal environment. That's the kind of things that Battlesnake does, is it shows not only do I love learning in a school, but I can teach myself and I can do a lot more of that self-directed stuff, which even those really high level schools don't teach you, but things like Battlesnake do.
Yeah, very much so. That is a great question. And yeah, 150 applications for 3 positions. Don't feel bad if you didn't get it. Yeah, it's hard to pick. And hiring managers are human beings who have faults and biases and, get tired, and evaluating someone's skills in a couple of hours is imperfect. So yeah. So what about the opposite? Would Battlesnake experience help you get into university? That's interesting. Like, it
depends on where you're going. I would say in general, well, so actually this is an interesting question. Yes, in that I think Battlesnake gives you a good way to actually really ingrain the concepts that you're learning in school in a really meaningful way. So if you're learning about certain types of algorithms in class, and you're like doing all of the math and you're learning these concepts and you understand the theory, but then oftentimes it'll be like, I'm going to go and apply this theory, and it's in a way that you get bored with it or tired with it. I think what Battlesnake does is provide you like this really cool practical way to apply that knowledge, which actually makes you remember it for those tests that you do in high school. So I think like where traditionally having Battlesnake on your resume might not necessarily be something that every post-secondary institution is going to look at, I think as a tool to help you ingrain those concepts that you're learning, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. So going back to our list, these are great questions. Thank you. Keep asking them. But going back to our list, if there's like a sub list, so if you're looking at your snake, you're like post competition and you're like, how do I zhuzh this up to make it attractive for someone who's reviewing it? You've got a little evidence maybe that you understand HTTP and basic web frameworks. This might be a good opportunity to prove you know a little something about how to optimize code. Maybe you're already there because your latency on your Battlesnake is so high that it forced you to solve this problem. But like a little bit of code optimization is a really great skill to demonstrate. And it doesn't have to be perfect once again, but having even a comment or an explanation or an attempt in there shows that you're thinking about that and you understand how that's a problem in the real world. Because often when you're transitioning from school to a professional job, like that's not something you think about, right? You're running all your programs yourself. Like there's no other load. Like you don't have to deal with a lot of those real world problems. But your Battlesnake may be a gateway to some of those like latency issues or load issues or like uptime issues. So if you have an opportunity or if you have been avoiding optimizing your code and you're hovering in like the 450 millisecond return rate, maybe it's a chance. Go through it. It'll make your snake better for your next competition. And it provides a little evidence of a really valuable skill.
For sure. I like that you keep saying something that's really important. I didn't realize, have you ever heard that saying, perfect is the enemy of good? It's like a Voltaire thing. I feel like that's so important with this. Like what you're doing with your snake is not necessarily demonstrating that you are perfect at every single thing. It's there to demonstrate that you are thinking about it, you're trying, you're doing, you have that energy. So don't be afraid to put something out there just because it's not what is it? I read a book the other day that said if you're in like the startup world and you're not embarrassed of your MVP, and then you've taken too long to put it out. And I think that there's something to be said with like sort of a snake in GitHub too, is if you're embarrassed of your snake, maybe you need to put some more work in like we're talking about here, but eventually you got to get it out there. And that's going to say a lot about what you've done.
Yeah. And this could be a comment too, right? This is a really good example of where you can toss in a comment if you don't have time to do the work, is you could be like, this is really inefficient. I am aware of that. My ideas are X, Y, and Z. And then you're good. Like what you have done is you've proven that you understand the problem and that you know how you want to approach it. And that's really what people are looking for. I mean, bonus points if you can get there. And you do need to practice actually doing it for sure, but that's a good first step. Another good one, your snake can also be a place to show that you understand like appropriate error handling and conditions and things like that. If you want to know one of my personal biases, and this is like a tough bias, I'm sorry, I'm a faulty human being, but I like deeply, deeply, deeply hate, like if I see a try catch base exception, I'm like, ugh, like I hate that. So maybe like step it up a little bit. That's my bias. If I'm ever reading your resume, that's something I will notice, and it will notice in a bad way. But like you can show that you understand how error handling works and practice that skill a little bit in there. I'm thinking. I don't know. Am I too harsh, Andrew?
I will definitely not notice that. It's good. See, I am the example of the like semi-lay person looking, and I would say, ooh, that looks like you did a very good job. That looks like a thing that I should hire you for. If it's well documented and it demonstrates all of these other things, I will be much less biased.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like I remember I have that bias and I try to set it aside. But I'm definitely more impressed when I see like, some good error handling, some thoughtful error handling. Like appropriate error handling proves that you have been bitten by just catching base class exception and then wishing you had more information because you were too lazy. So that's another good one.
So the chat's kind of slowed down. If you're in the chat and you want to throw some more questions our way, we've got lots of more tips for you, and we're going to go through some other stuff, but feel free to throw some more things in the chat. We're loving the conversation. Awesome questions.
So machine learning is another fun topic, and we don't have to linger on this one too long, but like a snake is a great opportunity to start exploring machine learning algorithms, especially if you're looking for like a data science job. It can be a little impressive, can be a little flashy. So yeah, maybe depends on how confident you are in your snake. Maybe it's not your prime Battlesnake, but it's a great opportunity, and something that I think makes Battlesnake snakes a really good code sample is, show that you've been exploring some libraries or implementing some algorithms yourself. It can be really, really good. Another thing, if you're going through the checklist of like things to add, if you haven't yet, you may want to start adding some like testing into your snake. I feel like if you've battled long enough, you reach a point where you're like making changes and you're breaking things you'd fixed in the past, and you're like, man, I need some regression tests to protect me from myself a little bit. But even just tossing a couple of tests in a sample can be really helpful. Don't feel like you need 100% coverage. Once again, as a reviewer, I'm just looking for evidence that you understand these concepts. So if you have like a test framework and there's one test in it and you're like, I know how to test, here's number one, more to come soon, then that's enough for me to be convinced that you understand basic testing, even if you didn't have time to flesh it all out. So like if it's between 0 and 1, take 1. And even better if it's helpful to your snake building for competition, because you keep breaking your own snake.
That's true. So did you see that comment from Smallsco in there?
If you had another 2 weeks to work on your Battlesnake or another side project, what would you add, change, or improve? Oh, that is such a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true, right? Like it makes them, it's that human piece. People want to talk about things that they're excited about and that they're passionate about. And I feel like if you've ever experienced Battlesnake, and if you're on this stream and you just happened upon here, welcome. But like you'll get into Battlesnake and you'll discover that it's this thing that you become passionate about, and that's a really important thing to share in those interviews. Thanks for sharing that, Smallscope. That's so true.
Yeah. Oh man, if you're lucky, you have a skilled interviewer. Like one of my favorite questions to ask at the end is there anything you want us to know about that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet? And that's like my catch-all, to be like, is there something that you think is really cool and we just have failed to ask the right question to give you a chance to talk about it? So if you're lucky, you get a question like that. But if you don't, like if you have a really like structured interview, like try to find opportunities to talk about things you're passionate about, because that passion is so compelling. So like know what you want to talk about. It doesn't matter what questions they're asking. Know what you want to talk about and find a way to inject it in the conversation.
Totally. And that's why Battlesnake's so good, right? Because if it's on your resume already, it's something, and they've got that resume in front of them, it's something that you can sneak even if it's a formal interview, you can sneak Battlesnake in there. Or maybe you're doing a whiteboard test and you can sneak, I remember doing something like this when I was building my snake. And like, it's things like that you can bring up that are really compelling, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right. So other checklist of items, if you're looking at your snake and you're looking to zhuzh it up, you've got some tests, you've got maybe an ML, like a machine learning algorithm in there. You've, proven some error handlings. Like if you've got like a little bit of a deploy pipeline, it doesn't have to be too fancy, but DevOps skills are highly desirable. And if you can like set up a few GitHub actions or something, or maybe use it as a motivation to start digging into that area, you could set up your Battlesnake to make it nicely deploy. So that's another area that you could highlight and kind of, one up. I mean, is it necessary? No, like you don't need it for your snake, but your snake is an opportunity to demonstrate those skills if they're skills that you have. Um, Another good item is like data storage. So once again, from the bias of someone who builds web services, but like I don't know a web service that doesn't have a database somewhere, either relational or non-relational. So do you need a database for your snake? No. But if you're storing like board states or whatever, it's really nice to like pop into a little database to just prove that you know what you're doing. It's just a signal to the person who's reviewing the code. So that's kind of an opportunity, right? Like it's not necessary, but it's like a little zhuzh. It kind of elevates your snake and elevates it as a sample of your work and what you're capable of, which is what you're doing. You want to demonstrate yourself. And final tip, this is maybe a little subtle, but if you are a more experienced or senior developer, if you put a lot of care into how you organize your code, make it really, really easy to read, throw in a lot of comments, you can actually kind of give a hint of how you are as a mentor. That's something that's really important for a more senior developer, is you're probably going to be involved in helping like grow and advance the skills of the more junior developers on your team. So if you can find ways to kind of like give hints about how you review, how you speak about code, how you make it easy to understand, that's like, it's a little nice cherry on the top. Mentorship skills are important and hard to kind of prove or know about. So that's kind of like my last thing.
Yeah, so in demand too, though, right? Like that those soft skills are it like programming, computer science, software engineering, software development is such a technical field that finding a way in all of that to demonstrate a more soft professional skill like communication and mentorship and education is super valuable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to go over the list, top to bottom, real quick. I mean, demonstrate some clean code principles. Get some comments, provide ideas and explanations about how to expound, show that you're a thinking, learning, growing person. Number 3, like it helps prove that you know some Git. So make sure that you've got some like good commits in there, or whatever system, whether you're using GitHub or something else. Make sure to use it, like put inside of your code a list of all of your skills, whether that's your HTTP knowledge, your optimization skills, your machine learning skills, your error handling, DevOps pipeline, testing methodologies, database. Maybe this is your chance to like explore a non-relational database and play with that and show that you have. And then through all of this, with like good comments and good commits, you might be able to kind of give a hint about your mentorship skills as well, if that's something you're working on. Yeah.
So chat, tell us what you think. Throw something in the chat. What do you think? Are these tips that you can apply in what you're doing for your resume right now? Or and if you're not in chat, we will assume that you say, yes, these were fantastic. What great tips, Aurora. And then small case Andrew. These are awesome.
Yeah. Should we put these in motion? I feel like a concrete example is always helpful. Alter Saddle posted their code. Should we try chat? Help us as well, actually. Alter Saddle, this is an act of love. We are reviewing this to help you be better. This is we care about you. So let's bring up, I've got this. Do I need to embiggen? Is this good enough?
That looks very good.
Yes, let's judge Alter's code, which if you watch Coding Badly, is a common opponent to Brad and Joe and is unbeatable, which makes sense to me. The ultimate test is in a Brad and Joe Coding Badly. Don't hold back. Okay. All right. So here's untimely neglected wearable. Let's take, we'll approach this as though we're like, it's 5 p.m. We're tired. We've been working all day. Those are true facts, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say it's 7 p.m. Pacific time. We've all been working all day. I like it. This is very accurate.
Okay. So first thing I'm noticing here that I really, really like is that this README is not the default README from a starter snake.
No.
This is like custom. This is an implementation of the Battlesnake API. Awesome. I like that because if it's someone who's not familiar with Battlesnake, now they have a place to get context. Yeah. And it's designed to be stateless, reusable, and performant. Cool. So yeah, like you're throwing out what your strategy is. Low power device. It could be much better. It's cute. It has code to do these things. I mean, this is just a nice checklist to review what it does. Next steps. I like that. Improve hazard code. So, I mean, this is exactly what we were talking about, right? With like comments that describe what you're thinking and how you're a growing person.
Totally.
Possible refactor.
That README file, like, I feel like people don't see necessarily always the value that README has, but like this is a demonstration of like the power of READMEs.
Yeah. It's like if I'm tired and that's like kind of, and then I click half-heartedly on a couple of files, like I at least believe that you've done something here, that this is yours. Oh man, that's another. What's really terrible, it's really rough and disheartening to see when I see like students who are applying and they provide a code sample that's a group project, and then you look in the commit history and realize that they were the person in the group who didn't do anything. So like even seeing these changes and seeing that these are changes made by you is like, mwah, wonderful.
Can we go in and see some of those? Can we test the commit history to see what changes have been made, to see if there is any profanity laden stuff hiding in there?
No, this is descriptive. This is fine.
This is super descriptive. Yeah, only go into hazards if a bigger snake could eat us. Like these are super descriptive commits.
Yeah. Remove swap file, food path finding. Yeah, this is great. Like, I mean, I have definitely read guides on like how to write proper, perfect commit messages, but like this is awesome.
This is awesome.
Yeah. Sweet. Okay, nice commit history, A+. So server.py, I'm going to crack this one open because this is the traditional Battlesnake file that you're given. So this should look familiar to us. Okay, so some changes. You've got some like globals here that are not part of the default. Got some to-dos. So pretty lean.
Yeah.
I think that's because, yeah, here we go. So I think everything's in snake brain. That's where the fun is. So maybe points. Snake brain made me laugh, but maybe it's not the most like clean code name. But you know, whatever. Get safe moves, get smart moves. Yeah, this is pretty lean. So okay, let's take a look at brain, because that looks like that's where the fun is. Snake brain.
See, and even that says something, right? That there's a different application of that initial starter snake, right? It's not just throwing everything in the server.py, which I think I certainly like all my stuff is just living in server.py. So I think even things like just utilizing a more well-rounded product is good.
Yeah, Exagon saying it's a clean abstraction to put in another function. Totally. And like, that's really what I'm looking for here is I do not have the energy to judge all of your functions here, but I see that you understand functions. You understand how to abstract and pull your code out. This is like actually quite like a lot more functions in division than I would expect from someone's Battlesnake repo, because knowing what I know about Battlesnake, we all know we do the mono function first, right? Like that's how we go. So get all moves, get reverse, get save moves. Very consistent, clean Pythonic naming scheme here. So I like that. Avoid snakes. Yeah. Future head. Cool. Danger or eated. Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of abstraction here, a lot of chunks. Get future head positions.
There's a question in chat. Just what is that get reverse function that you just went by?
Get reverse. Where is that? Oops, sorry. Oh, hello. Here we go. Here's the big chunk of indented if else's. Where was that? This file is huge. Get reverse. Reverse moves. Okay, where's that used? Reverse moves left, right, right, left, up, down, up. What is that used for? Alter saddle. Can you explain yourself? I mean, it seems to give you the opposite. Like this is a dictionary. If you provide it left, it gives you the opposite right and up and down on the axis. But I guess the $1 million question is, what is that even used for? For choice and get save moves. Really need to choose a new direction now. So steps to safety.
It's just a convenience function when I want to know what backwards is.
Interesting. Cool. What witchery is this? Man, isn't all code a little bit of black magic? How have we managed to trick the machines into doing what we tell them to? That's the real mystery. Sweet. Nice. I mean, there's a lot here. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
So like at this point, I would probably get tired, to be totally honest with you. I'd be like, I've seen enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
I might go into another file. Like, I mean, if we want to be critical on Alter Saddle, I would say this starts becoming a bit of a warning flag for me, having this much indentation. So if I was prepping this sample for like a job application, I would try to start breaking this file up a little bit because it's kind of hard to like parse all up at once. And I would try to get rid of some of these like code smells, I guess is what do you call them, with like all of this like level of indentation. I know we're in competition. I know like we're doing what we need to do and we're like having fun coding. But this might be like a bit of polish you could put on for a job application.
What about linking specific games in a job application to show this stuff in action? That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, it can work. The key once again is that like it has to be easy and it has to work.
Yeah.
So like if I've definitely seen that before where like people have like, here's a game and I had to download something, I'm like, I'm out. But if it's like running in a web browser or there's like a quick link that gets me immediately there and I don't have to do anything, then that's like a nice little extra polish. So make sure that the path is smooth and easy for the person reviewing. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. What else? Yeah, I mean, like this is just polish. Like this isn't too bad. I wouldn't give like negative points on this. I can see that this is a piece of living code. So maybe like breaking it up a little bit more if you really wanted to kind of polish. And another motivation for breaking it up is that if you do have different chunks of logic, or like, let's say, I get the impression here that there's a lot of different strategies in here that you might be like picking and choosing from. So if one of those strategies was like you have your like procedural kind of snake, but if you had like a machine learning snake component, I would make sure to pull that out and highlight it that it exists. Basically like make it easy for them to find the stuff that you're most proud of. So if I have to dig through this file for the thing you think is really cool or that you're really proud of, that's hard. So you want to like highlight it and make it really easy for me to find.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like even as like the non-programmer of the stream right now, like it does get really chunky, right? And you start losing it, just everything starts to blend together into just this big glob of code. It looks like the Matrix.
Yeah, for sure. I see this test folder up here though. That's pretty great. Looks like, what is this? This is okay, this is like board state. Okay. That's cool. Some debug. Is there a Python file? Transform. Okay, so not like traditional testing tools, but this looks like this is kind of like a dynamic tester. So because this is very Battlesnake specific and contextual. So as someone who is familiar with Battlesnake, I look at this and I get what you're doing. But if you're not writing like more traditional unit tests, I would recommend tossing like a brief README in here or something to just be like, yeah, this is what the testing is for. This is how this works. This is why I chose this approach. Just like a little explanation for someone who wasn't familiar with Battlesnake to understand why you have a test file, a test folder full of JSON blobs. Yeah. Like, once again, not necessary for your Snake performance, not necessary for like your performance in Spring League. But when looking from the perspective of how do I zhuzh up my code to make it good for a job application, that can be a little helpful thing. Yeah.
It's awesome. Is there any CI set up in here? Do we have any DevOps that is like visible from within this repo?
I guess that's a good question. So let's see if we can figure out how it's being deployed.
Is there I see the actions thing at the top. I wonder if it's actually set up and running anything.
Yeah, there's a Replit file. So it could be running in Replit, maybe. There's a poetry file.
Yeah. Probably. It's probably a Replit, which is totally fair. Is there anything in there? No, it's just blank.
No, it's just empty. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not totally sure where this is being run. Running in Heroku and no CI at all. There we go. So yeah, like you don't need that. Obviously, you are surviving in the league. But if you wanted to elevate and kind of use this as an excuse to prove some skills you have, even a simple CI pipeline just to demonstrate that you know what that is and you know it's useful. It's just like a nice little nod. It's a little gem that you make it easy for the person who's reviewing to see.
It's true. And if you're not a big GitHub user, if you're watching this and it's not your thing, when you're building out the repositories, there's a section when you, so you can see on Alter Saddle, there's releases and packages and languages. There's one there that talks about deployments. And so it'll show if you've got it set up to automatically deploy to GitHub Pages or Heroku or wherever it is. So you can make it super obvious for people.
Interesting. So Ultrasound said in chat, particularly proud of the debug endpoint. That must be in, sorry, awkward zoom there. That must be in server. Did you create a debug? Yeah, debug endpoint. Nice. That's pretty good. Yeah. I mean, I like seeing that too, and that's something that can be nice. So server.py is small enough that a reviewer will probably find it. If you want to like really make it stand out, because something that's tough is like the difference between a code sample where someone was like following a tutorial or like a starter, like, because I'm guessing it's obvious. Was this forked? Yeah, this was forked from the Python starter snake. So one of the questions when I'm looking at this is like, how much is theirs? How much is from the fork, right? So if you wanted to kind of highlight debug, I would pop like a little comment in there or something that was like, this is my custom debug function, that I built. And that's a good thing to show. It shows that you're providing and building your own tools for debugging and building, which is like a useful skill. Like you want to prove you know how to do that.
Do you think there's a place in there, Aurora, for like a README to do like a link to, because I know like you can just throw in like a markdown link to a specific place if you really want to highlight for like super low level, not within like the encode commenting, but is that something that you would see and be like, oh, they're identifying things that they see as their strengths?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's definitely worth trying to put in those breadcrumbs. Like the higher up it is and the easier it is to see, the more likely they'll see it.
Yeah.
I would also definitely put those breadcrumbs in if they're relevant to the job you're applying for, because they might be looking for it. And if there are specific things you want to highlight, you could also put that in the cover letter as well. So you're like, oh, hey, like you've expressed that, like, interaction with non-relational databases is really important to you. I've actually done that in this project. You can see what I did here, and you can like link to it from your cover letter to like really highlight the things that are applicable for the job posting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. So like, I don't know if we were using a letter grade system, untimely neglected wearable, like I feel like this is like, if you're applying for kind of an entry-level position, at least, I think this is an excellent code sample. I think the higher up, the more scrutiny you're going to get. So you want to sort of tighten up those little bits, like the really big, rambling, heavily indented functions. But you've got some really good elements here. And if we go back to our checklist, I think the things we're missing are a CI pipeline and proof that you understand how databases work. I'm sure that you do. I'd like Alter Saddle, undefeated snake clearly knows what they're doing. But for someone reviewing your code in a job application who might not be aware of your legacy, it helps to show them through evidence. So I think that would be needed.
So do we say B+, A-?
Yeah. I'm feeling good with like a good B+. I think this is great.
Solid B+, but I think it might get that like teacher bump up because volunteered the code sample, and that is always part of deep learning. If you're going to learn, you're going to get bonus points. We don't have stickers. Oh, we do have stickers, but we can't give out stickers. This is the perfect show to give out stickers. It's like we're teaching and you deserve stickers. And gold, nothing says Battlesnake Gold Star like an awesome snakehead sticker.
Yeah. It's just got to be like an overlay we've got to put on the stream. Like,
you get a sticker. I love that.
Gold Star. That's great.
For the next deep learning. All
right. Well, Alter Saddle, thank you for being brave and letting us review and provide some commentary on your code, Untimely Neglected Wearable. I certainly hope you are in Spring Lead. Last chance, if anyone wants us to also go over a review, if you would like to get a little feedback on your Battlesnake and how job application ready it is.
We're here for you.
Yeah, we are here for you.
But we're also here in the community. If you are just here on Twitch, you can always reach out to us on Discord. We are over there. And if you go to play.battlesnake.com, you can get a link to our Discord. And also you can find us here. We're going to be here on Thursdays, right? But
yeah.
Is it next Thursday or the Thursday after?
It's going to be alternating Thursdays. So this time slot next Thursday, there's going to be a Snake Pit live with, I believe, Chris, Curtis, and Aileen. So definitely tune in for that. But every other week, there'll be a deep learning. So we will be swapping back and forth. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for those of you who joined us in the pilot today, trying out kind of an interesting educational topic, that of like career development and advancement. I think next week, are we going to go kind of into the academic direction?
Yeah, we're doing like a deep dive into the academy.
Yeah.
So, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So tune in for that. Also, if you've got topics, this is the official use of the deep learning channel on Discord. You can throw topics that you'd like to have on deep learning in that Discord channel, and we will add them to our list of deep learning goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are yourself an expert, if you have deep knowledge on a topic, we would love to talk to you, either to get a brief, or if you'd like to join us, we'd be delighted to have you. But let's deep dive together. Let's enjoy the process of learning in a friendly, safe environment, and we'll do a little thing. So let us know what you'd like us to dive into. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to geeking out on some machine learning stuff and other aspects. So yeah, this is our call. This is our ask to you. If you have a snake using some sort of interesting technique that you think we should dive into, or similar, yeah.
Send it our way, because we want to do a deep dive into some really cool code. And thank you all for being here. This is awesome. Yeah. I know for some of you, this is like 10 o'clock. For some of you, it's like 3 a.m. So thank you so much for being here. And like, check out that link, that one down there. Spring League is happening now. You can win cool stuff. It's such a cool competition. We've got crazy, awesome things happening. So check it out.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. And we will see you all in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.